Welcome back. The day has finally come. The next chapter of the MCU is here, and I got the chance to go opening night to Doctor Strange to the Multiverse of Madness. Now, I'm pretty sure you can kind of feel and understand from my thumbnail that coming out of this movie, I'm not too I'm personally not too big on it, and for a lot of what I was thinking about on my ride home and while watching the movie is kind of what exactly was this movie trying to be? You have Benedict Cumberbatch again reprising his role as Doctor Strange. Elizabeth Olsen's playing Wanda Maximoff. We have other characters like Benedict Wong as Wong. Um, I Miss Gomez a chocolate. I mispronounced that name. Sorry, I should have looked up Miss. I'll just call her Miss Gomez playing America Chavez, and Rachel McAdams coming back as Christine Palmer. There's other people that you'll see in the movie being cameos slash important style roles. We know from the trailer, Mr. Edgeofor plays Mordo again, and from a different universe. Um, Kind of linking up with what has been revealed as the Illuminati, as in some of the new trailers coming along. But this movie is a giant mixed bag for me in a lot of different ways. First off, I think the acting performances from a lot of people, especially Elizabeth Olsen and Miss Gomez as America Chavez, were particularly strong. And I thought they gave their characters a lot of weight and nuance, and in some ways felt like the main heart of this movie. Um, Benedict Cumberbatch does a great job as both our Doctor Strange and a few other variants of Doctor Strange out there. But the movie for me never really gave him a through line as a main character throughout. In some ways, he was kind of the advisor slash helper of America Chavez and her journey. And I think in a lot of ways, this movie suffers from a big game of tug of war between Wanda Maximoff and being the antagonist, facing off against Strange and Wong and the sorcerers of the world that we know, and Stephen Strange's own personal kind of world where he's come back from. I think the movie sets up very well in the very beginning of what could have been a great movie, kind of referencing back to how Stephen maybe handled the events of Infinity War and Endgame with his battle with Thanos, and I think there could have been some excellent foils shown throughout the movie to highlight, was it, kind of asking that question of was this truly the only way that Strange could have defeated Thanos, um, and also how again has a great moment early on about how the blip affects people's lives, in a very dark way, but outside of the first act of this movie, Strange kind of loses his kind of thread as a main character, and it gets heavily passed off in some very sloppy ways to both Wanda, Elizabeth Olsen's character, and Miss Gomez as America Chavez. Again, I feel like in this movie, everybody else is trying to grow, where Stephen Strange is kind of staying put, and I thought that the movie set itself up to be a little bit different from that. Um, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is just a very clunky movie. And it's something that, in all honesty, I heard there were rumors near the end of last year or last summer that this didn't get positive test results. We know Scott Erickson, the original director of Doctor Strange, left and got replaced by Sam Raimi, potentially over creative differences. And while this is definitely the most horror movie of a Marvel movie we've had, there definitely feels like this movie is something that kind of got reshot and remade, and especially the second act seems very forced together and so inconsequential to the plot of the movie that I think it's going to leave Marvel fans and MCU fans kind of shaking their head and wondering what was the point. Um, and I think it might turn some people off. What I will say though is the third act works very, very well. That's where Strange kind of starts to push himself a little bit. You really have really great scenes between Wanda and America Chavez. America, again, her arc in this movie is just very well done. She's honestly, Miss Gomez stole the show for me. She's a character coming out that I want more of and I want to learn more of, and I'm excited to learn more of. Um, but in all honesty, without going into spoilers, this movie just has a lot of issues overall. Even though a third plot was very well done and has very good actions and visuals, it doesn't really fit together in a mold of a movie. What I will say is I'll leave off. I have to kind of leave off as most some Marvel movies have in second. When you have a second movie out of three, this movie definitely leaves you off with potential consequences that could have came from it. So we'll see if what happens with the multiverse with Doctor Strange in this movie comes back and affects his world or other worlds in different ways. But I felt with how much that was tampered with in this movie, there was very little consequence to come from it. Again, Benedict Wong is great as Wong. Cumberbatch is great as Strange. Olsen's great as Maximoff. Gomez is great as Chavez. Rachel McAdams actually does a really good kind of palate cleansing role as a Christine Palmer in this movie. And I honestly think that she did give Strange that extra little character development in the third act that made it kind of a very enjoyable third act and strong conclusion to a movie that in the middle was losing its way and felt like something completely different. Um, as far as recommendations for this movie, I think if you're an MCU fan and you're somebody who likes the Marvel properties and you like following along the story, this movie is a must watch for you because you are going to have things that happen from this movie and characters that are from this movie that I imagine will take much bigger precedent in future Marvel projects and movies, especially America Chavez. She does not seem like a character that is just a one off type character. She seems just like Captain Marvel and Star Lord in the Guardians of the Galaxy. She seems universe changing, and I think in a positive way. Where Captain Marvel, I had some issues with that movie overall, with how they handled the Carol Danvers character, as an individual. I think Chavez comes off here as a really interesting character that I want to learn more about, and I want to see her grow into something more powerful and strong, and become this bit next set of more a next set character in the Marvel universe. I think she set up very, very well. What they do with Wanda in this movie, I think, is very interesting and strong. I don't think it went as hard as I would have liked to with the Wanda Maximoff storyline. And I do think it kind of is a little bit disjointed with WandaVision as a show. Um, but I think, again, where she is left off in this movie is going to affect some stuff going forward. I think Wong is the definitive um, Sorcerer Supreme in the beginning of this movie. And I think this is the best showing of Wong in a movie per se. So if you are an MCU watcher and you do watch MCU movies, and you want to keep up with the story, this is a must watch for you. If you like your actiony style films with some comedy, some really cool visuals per se, with added in with some horror elements, you'll probably enjoy parts of this movie, and I think you might get some enjoyment out of this, in different ways. But if you're not somebody who's hardcore in the MCU, if you're somebody who's looking for a very strong story and plot line, this is not a movie I recommend for you. I think this movie's second act really destroys the plot per se, and in a lot of ways, I feel damages the enjoyment of this movie as a movie by itself. It feels like a middle chapter of a bigger story, but not in the best way. I know coming off of No Way Home, we kind of had some multiverse stuff happen, and I almost wish we had more connection to that movie in some ways, because this didn't feel like it was connected to that movie as much as it should have been. So, but yeah, unless you're a hard, unless you're one of those people who wants to keep up with the MCU and you watch all of it because it does pay off down the line, this is not a movie I'm going to strongly recommend for people because I do think it is one of the weaker performances of the MCU, and it makes me, I don't want to say worried, but I definitely think they need to kind of, and I think we kind of heard it from Kevin Feige. They need to start planning these things out better. And I know COVID shuffled movies around, and this wasn't the exact dates and the exact lineup they had because Sony put their their tent pole in for Spider-Man No Way Home to be where it was, causing that movie kind of to be reshot, as well as the Multiverse of Madness. But for all those movie promises, I think it comes short in a lot of different ways, and the biggest way is that Stephen Strange didn't grow as the character overall. I feel, and I think while it has great actions and we see interesting stuff from Wanda and her growth as a character and power and more, and we really get a shining future star in America Chavez. I think the fact that Stephen Strange kind of almost plays as a kind of secondary character thematically in this movie just really gives me the struggle overall. And I think it's something that Marvel has to worry about when it comes to future projects, that maybe this shouldn't have been called Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Maybe this should have been a mix of what was called House of M style stuff, or even something with America Chavez in the title because she is the star of the show, and not just because as we see in the poster here, stars are very much incorporated in her character. But yeah, where would I rank this though of all the movies I've seen this year in 2022? Well, it scrapes just above The Secrets of Dumbledore to make it into my top 10 for at least one weekend. Like I said, the third act was, I felt, very well done. The first act had some interesting moments, but it felt kind of put together at some points. The second acts just feel like a complete reshoot and a mishandling of an idea, that I'm interested to see how MCU fans feel coming out of it, because what should have been cheerful applause moments, I feel, became what is going on? What did they just do? Did that really just happen in this very full theater? There are two mid-credit scenes, but the second one is not one you have to stay for. If anything, it's more of a troll. And I'll be honest, leaving the theater, some people were kind of like, "Of course, they always get us with that one. Why do we even sit through the whole credits?" So I think Marvel needs to be careful not to be putting those trolls in too much. It works in movies like and it works a little bit here, and it works, but it works better in like Guardians of the Galaxy per se. But with how much the movie leaves off, you wanted to have more of an impact. But this movie to me isn't as good as a movie as some of the ones above it. I did not enjoy this as much as Sonic. I did not enjoy this as much as Scream 5. I definitely did not enjoy this as much as The Lost City. I come out of this movie feeling that you know, we can't have these heavily reshot, redone movies copy and where it's very just disjointed and iffy. There were great horror elements in this movie at points, and I wish we got more of that type of a movie. I wish we could have taken different parts and put it together and make this into almost two separate movies. But it kind of got put together in one, and because of that, I just really felt very lukewarm coming out of this movie, and overall not exactly pleased with one of my favorite characters and a few of my favorite characters, and especially with the second act with what they chose to do. I think they could have had something that could have been very positive result wise and very happy, but they just kind of threw it away in different ways. But I don't think I'm going to do a spoiler review of this. If you want to see a spoiler review, put it in the comments below. But I didn't really get much traction out of my Batman spoiler review, and I don't think I have much more to add besides just talking about those scenes for a few minutes, and I don't think that makes for a good spoiler review. What I will say here is we're going to be. I'm interested to see what this is. What is it going to do with the box office this weekend? It was packed here tonight, but I'm interested to see if word of mouth is going to be strong on this movie for MCU fans, and it's going to break into the 200 millions, or if more people are going to come away with my feelings on it, and it's going to bring it back down to earth into more of the 160 to 180 million dollars per se, or maybe even lower. I'm interested to see what it does in the box office. We'll wrap that up on Sunday. And I'm going to announce here, we're going to, as this is Doctor Strange in a Marvel movie, I'm going to be debuting another new show on Wednesday, where I will be turning Wednesdays into a ranking show, into where I will bring, I will give different categories, and I will be going into my rankings of those things over the course of multiple weeks. Starting out as fitting with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and partially inspired because I saw Moon Knight, and I kind of want to talk about all the Marvel properties in one. Over the next 3 to 4 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, I will be breaking down both the Marvel TV shows and the Marvel films in my top list, top to bottom. What movies I think are at the top of the list being my favorites, as well as the shows I find my favorites, and doing little mini reviews along the way of those individual projects. Um, but hey, check that out next Wednesday. That my first one will be out, where I'll go over the 6 MCU shows. Again, you'll get kind of my pseudo review of Moon Knight, as well as WandaVision, Loki, Falcon Winter Soldier, What If, and Hawkeye. And then after that, we'll go into the movies that are pretty deep per se, and we'll probably break them up into 4 or 5 weeks total, and then we'll go from there on other lists overall. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the Multiverse of Madness. Check out the box office review coming up on Sunday, and check out the Marvel MCU show rankings next Wednesday. But until then, I hope you enjoy yourself. Let me know if you like the Multiverse of Madness below. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed my review. Subscribe if you like content that I'm putting out here. And I hope you guys have an excellent weekend and a happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And until next time, have a good time, have a good day, and have a good night.